Questions presented during the following program were compiled by media representatives from the Cupertino Courier, Cupertino Neighbor, and the San Jose Mercury News. The City of Cupertino does not take responsibility for the editorial content. The City Channel presents Meet the Media, a 5-part series featuring each of the candidates running for Cupertino City Council. As part of our ongoing coverage of the Cupertino City Council race, this series has been designed as an up-close and personal introduction to each candidate. Tonight's featured candidate is incumbent Lauralee Sorensen. Mrs. Sorensen, a 58-year-old school nurse and current City Council member, will be interviewed by Mike Betz, editor for the Cupertino Courier, Annie Belt, reporter for the Cupertino Neighbor, and Michael Cronk, reporter for the San Jose Mercury News. City Council candidate Lauralee Sorensen's interview now begins with a question from Michael Cronk.
Mrs. Sorensen, you were a member of the council majority that last June adopted the general plan, which has been criticized in some quarters as one that allows too much industrial expansion, will lead to massive traffic problems, the destruction of life in Cupertino as we know it. Do you feel that those are legitimate concerns, or perhaps a misunderstanding by those people of what the general plan is intended to do and what it will do?
I think that it's probably a misunderstanding by people that are looking at the general plan. What we meant to do with the general plan, or what I feel, excuse me, that we did with the general plan, is we've ensured that growth will not be run away. We've ensured that there will be no further tall buildings in the center of Cupertino. They'll be along the freeway, if any indeed are built. We've ensured the protection of the hillsides. And I think the growth that we gave to the companies sent a very strong message to our companies that we value them in Cupertino, and we want them to remain in Cupertino. And I'm sure that you realize, having driven up Stevens Creek today probably, how many vacant buildings there are and how many vacant offices there are. And that's more my concern at this present time than what we did in June.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sorensen, kind of as a direct follow-up to that, you're talking about vacant buildings and offices. During the campaign, you've mentioned preserving long-term jobs in Cupertino as one of the priorities. How can the city go about preserving that? How can you preserve long-term jobs in the city?
For the past 2 years, when we've set our goals as a council, I've recommended that we employ an economic development officer. And initially, I recommended that we go jointly with the chamber. The chamber's in the same financial state that, many of our small businesses are in. I would see having an economic development officer, and if we have one, if we are able to employ one, that this person would go after business to come into these vacant buildings. And I'm talking about cottage industry that would help our major companies, also some retail, but businesses that would be clean and that would have a sales office in Cupertino. So therefore, we would be filling our vacant buildings, we'd be generating sales tax, and I think it would pay for the economic development officer. I'd also like to see businesses put on a fast track, similar to what Sunnyvale has done, because if you're able to get a business through all of the various permits and licenses that they have to have, that means the sooner that they can open. And the third thing that I'd like to see along that same line would be to reinstitute the Business Roundtable, which we were doing when I was mayor, and then we switched focuses, and we did not keep up with the Business Roundtable. And I think if it's reinstituted, it's not only the large companies, but it's also, I would want to see small retail businesses involved in it. We need to communicate and let our businesses know we value them.
Mrs. Sorensen, what role do you see the City Council taking in regards to problems of increasing violence among juvenile age students?
I think the council has already been proactive in looking at violence in our community and drugs, which directly lead to violence. 3 years ago, we hired a youth probation officer, and it's a joint venture with the city, Cupertino Union School District, Fremont Union High School District, the probation department, and the sheriff's department. We're all three involved in paying this gentleman's salary. His name is Terry Mullen. Terry receives all of the citations that are given out to any youth in our area, and he reviews these. And if the young person who has been cited agrees to what Terry has laid out as a recommended course, then he keeps the records for 2 years. If they don't follow what he does, then they can end up in juvenile hall. This has been very, very successful. We're seeing increased violence, but on the other hand, it's not as bad as it is in other cities, which doesn't condone it in Cupertino. I also think that the step that we probably took that we did take the other night will probably have an impact on this, and that was when we decreased the hours at Taco Bell, which is unfortunate because they bring in a lot of revenue for themselves and for the city. But on the other hand, there will not be a place for youth to congregate. One of the citizens at that time had suggested that we needed to look at something for our youth, some place for them to go in the evening. And this was discussed 3.5 years ago when we were discussing what to do with the sports center, and I happened to chair that committee. And I think it's time to reopen that and see what can we do that's healthy and that's a positive alternative for our kids so that they aren't on the street.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sorensen, what would you say were or do you believe were your major accomplishments in your first term of office? And what one major thing, if you had to choose one thing, would you like to accomplish during a second term?
Major accomplishments while I was in office. One would be that I was on the council that we did acquire the sports center. We did acquire Blackberry Farm. We did acquire Fremont Older School Site. And these will be here long after all of us that are here right now are gone. They've been land banked. We passed the general plan. We've gone ahead as far as the public transit is concerned. We've been working very, very hard on that. We have the youth probation officer, which I just mentioned. I feel that I've done a lot in communicating with the community. I also feel that all the public agencies are working more closely together than they ever were. And by that I mean the 3 school districts and the city, as well as the chamber. What would I like to see happen in the future? I'd like to see the economy improve. I'd like to see for us to get more money in order to have the services that our citizens want us to have and want us to give.
Thank you.
Talking kind of as a follow-up to the economy improving, with the economic situation the way it is now, how active a role should the city continue to play with the library, which receives a lot of funds, most of its funds from the county? How active a role should the city play?
That was one of the statements that I made on my ballot statement, was that I felt, and I did this in July long before I knew what was going to happen to the library, that I felt that we needed to look at long-term funding for the library. And at the present time, what the city is going to be doing is we've taken $55,000 out of our reserves in order to open the library for an additional 4 hours and to buy $15,000 worth of material. What we want the Library Commission to do is to try and match that $55,000 and go out and actively seek money from the community, which means that they will become a 501(c) or a nonprofit foundation. They need to look at what they can do with volunteers, because there are people that are willing to volunteer in the library, and we felt that they could use more volunteers. And on the long term, we've directed the city manager to work with a committee in order to see what will happen in the long term. And by long term, I'm talking about we expect a report back next spring.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sorensen, Cupertino is one of several cities in Santa Clara County that, as of June 1993, has not complied with the California Affordable Housing Law. Do you support affordable housing in Cupertino? And if so, how do you believe it's best to approach resolving neighborhood opposition to an affordable housing project, if it's a good one?
I do support affordable housing, and I think that came through in my vote when we discussed it. As far as neighborhood opposition is concerned, I think that we need to work with the neighborhood so that they can understand what it will look like and what it will be. Interestingly enough, before I came over, and I'll have to put on my glasses to see my figures, I had just recently read an article that was in some papers that the city manager had sent out, and I believe he sent this to all of the candidates. 27% of the states and counties, or the cities and counties, have adopted a housing ordinance in compliance with the law. That is only 27% statewide. There are 47 jurisdictions received warnings last year, and there are about 10 or 11 within the courts right now, and the courts are ruling in favor of the affordable housing. I think if we don't do something in Cupertino, the state is going to force us to do it.
Thank you.
In talking about the action that was taken recently in terms of city council action with the funding of the Cupertino Library, as you know, in recent budgets over the last 2 or 3 years, the council has used reserve funds, dipped into reserve funds to fund major capital improvements, including just over $1 million this fiscal year.
Actually, it was only $400,000.
Of the reserve?
Mm-hmm.
All right. You voted for that. From what I understand, you believe that the tapping into reserves is warranted in the kinds of cases that you're talking about, such as the library? Or
In the library, yes. I'm not for tapping into reserves every time, something comes up. Our commission when they came to us, they only want this as a one-time operation. They only want it through June 30th, through this fiscal year for the state. And we question them very closely on this because I don't think we would be willing to tap into reserves again in order to do this. There is a bill on the governor's desk. I think it's AB 566. I've got my 5s and 6s mixed up on that bill, and I can't remember what the number is. If the governor signs it, we can by a majority vote do an assessment district for the library. And this is certainly what other communities have done. Los Altos has a parcel tax that they did for their libraries, and they got the same percentage of cuts that we did, but their hours weren't cut as long because of their parcel tax. And I think Saratoga also put some money into their libraries. When you look down the county libraries, those that are open on Sundays are the ones that the cities give funding to. Those that are open only through Tuesday. Most of the libraries are closed on Mondays. Those that are open on Tuesdays through Saturdays are primarily, they had their hours cut. I know one other thing on the library that I forgot to mention. De Anza College has a library, and it is a community library, and any of us can use it. And their hours are from 7 to 9 daily, except they aren't open on Sunday. And I think it's probably time that we look at forming partnerships with our community college on libraries. Also time to talk to Fremont Union High School District and Cupertino Union School District to see how we can better work together, specifically on the library issue, because we're already doing it on other issues. And I know our city manager meets with the superintendents of the various schools on a monthly basis.
Thank you.
In terms of revenue sources for the city, you've mentioned other cities have parcel taxes. The city manager identified several areas that the city might want to look at in the future for increasing revenue, and one of them was the discretionary transfer tax for homes. If the courts were to rule that the city could, in fact, charge that tax, would you support it?
I'm not sure. In all candor, I would have to look at all sides of it to see how much it would generate and to see what the impact would be on our citizens. Certainly, housing value prices have gone down, so there might be a greater impact.
Thank you.
As before.
Mrs. Sorensen, if you're reelected, and you could be sure you could do one thing in the next 4 years with your influence on the council, what would you want to do?
What would I want to do? I think I'd want, the one thing that I would want to do would be to have the economic development officer, because I see that as probably the most proactive, important thing that we can do in the near future.
I hate to get back to the general plan, but that has been discussed quite a bit. You addressed a little bit about the two major elements a lot of people are talking about is the amount of industrial expansion allowed, and you spoke to that earlier. Specifically on the hillsides and the diocese property, just to state for the record, what is your position on whether you feel that there should be, at this point, any compromise in terms of the amount of development that's allowed?
Michael, this is in litigation, and I choose not to comment on that. I stand by my vote that I made with the general plan on the units.
As you know, others, colleagues have not been as reticent, but I understand.
Okay, I cannot answer for my colleagues. I feel that what we discuss in closed session must remain in closed session.
Thank you.
All right. I kind of want to do a follow-up to that, but in a much broader sense. In your campaign, you've mentioned preserving open space as one of the key issues in the campaign, and you mentioned today during the interview that acquiring the sports center and Blackberry Farm were some of the major accomplishments you had as a council member in the last 4 years. My question is, what more can the city do in terms of preserving open space? What more of a role can the city play?
I don't think right now that we can play a major role. We don't have the money, and if we went before the citizens to try and raise the money, I'm not sure it would pass this time. I think we were very, very fortunate that we were able to get it passed before. The other area of open space, if you want to consider it open space, is that the city of Cupertino is going to we have the agreement with the Cupertino Union School District on the sports fields. And I think by opening these up and improving them, this in essence is open space also. I wish we could have little parks all over the city. Little parks are expensive to keep up. My thought certainly on the diocese property would be to connect it with Rancho San Antonio. That would seem to make the most sense, depending on the outcome of the EIR or the environmental impact report and what happens in the next 6 months.
Thank you.
We have received telephone calls from city officials and candidates seeking to influence the upcoming election, but insisting that their names not be mentioned in resulting articles. What is your opinion
Of that, I think it's irresponsible. I think it's poor. I know I haven't done it, so I'm not one of the guilty parties. I feel I want to see clean elections in Cupertino. I don't want to see anger and accusations made in the newspaper or made in public. This makes people stop and wonder why they should run for political office if they're going to be attacked all the time. And it isn't right. This isn't what our city is about. We have a wonderful, caring city. And I think it's irresponsible and
Thank you.
not do it.
The other issues, you've talked about several. I know that in earlier conversations you had expressed that you had gone and talked to some of the constituents, some of the residents in the city, and what their concerns were. Could you just to share with us some of the major things that they're talking about to you, or what they really feel is important.
Okay, what I'm hearing is jobs and the economy, and I think we have to consider what the recent Apple and Tandem layoffs have done to the community, the stress level that has occurred within families and within people that have been laid off and are unable to find jobs, and they may have to move from the area. These are the things that people are talking about. And the other thing is the diocese property. And I don't know whether the doors I've been knocking on are the ones that want it to be kept open. They would even go further than the council did. I remember one young man who stated to me he wanted nothing up there, to do something about it. And I said, well, we couldn't do that. Can't take away landowners' rights. But, to me, what I am hearing is the economy.
The City of Cupertino would like to thank City Council candidate Lauralee Sorensen and media panel guests Annie Belt, Mike Betz, and Michael Cronk for their participation in this program. Election Tuesday is November 2nd. Vote for the 3 candidates best suited to serve on Cupertino City Council. And keep watching the City Channel for special City Council election programming. Throughout October, we'll be broadcasting this 5-part Meet the Media series, in addition to Meet the Candidate segments featuring each candidate's political platform, tape coverage of the October 12th Candidates Forum, and our live Election Night special. Refer to your free election edition of the City Channel program schedule, now available at City Hall, the library, Quinlan Community Center, and TCI Cable Office on Imperial Avenue.